overview of compliance. We set ourselves to thinking about how does a small or a micro business, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-person company, do it? This is such an entrepreneurial environment in Huntsville. We are starting businesses left and right. Even though you may or may not be starting a business yourself, you guys in the financial industry, you're dealing with people that are starting businesses. Y'all that are doing HR, you're dealing with people that are starting businesses. I know you are, because that's what, they don't have enough money to have their own HR person. That's your stock and trade. Well, this is the kind of thing that even if it doesn't directly help you, it will help the people that you are involved with. When we set ourselves to think about this, we did an article. And did everybody pick up one of these? Okay, so this is our article, and this goes into a timeline, an 18-month timeline for a small business. We said, let's not just give them a bunch of stuff. Let's actually give them a roadmap to follow to start a compliance program. Vicki's going to go over some of the current hot topics in compliance and give that a broad brush, because I know we don't have a ton of time. We're going to fly through this. And y'all, we could spend days on this. So this is like not the 30,000. This might be like the space level. Look at this. So, and then I'm going to roll in and show you the timeline of what we think would be a good timeline and some good practices for your company. So with that, Vicki Gesellschaft, I'll let Vicki introduce herself, and I'll step away and come back to you in a minute.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
As she said, I'm Vicki Gesellschaft. I know that's a crazy last name. Just call me Vicki, Vicki G, whatever you'd like. I am in-house counsel for an environmental services company here in Huntsville, Alabama called ADS Environmental Services, and I am their contracts counsel. I do compliance as well, trade compliance mainly for us because we export a lot of goods overseas. So I am on the commercial side. I've practiced law since, I guess, 2001, like she said, close to the same time. Originally from Pensacola, Florida, been in Huntsville a little over 10 years. Of course, we're lawyers. We have to put the legal disclaimer up there. This is not legal advice. Please don't take it as such. And you should consult an attorney should you have any questions and specific things on this project, this stuff. And I can't get my clicker to work, so here we go. Oh, no. I'm not familiar with Macs. Please forgive me. The clicker is not working for me.
Alexa, next.
Yeah, who knows Max? Here we go. Compliance with what exactly? Well, you've got your laws, rules, and regulations. I won't go through all of those, but those initials and those acronyms may seem familiar to some of you in the room. I heard a lot of financial industry people here. Tons of regulation in the financial industry that you need to pay attention to. Internal policies and procedures. Yes, you have to follow your own policies and procedures. That's very, very important. And the government, if they come to look at your system and your program, that's what they're going to look for, to make sure you're following your own rules. Why do you need a program? Flat out, it's just good business practice. It regularly assesses the company's risk. It's something you probably as small business owners aren't really thinking about. You know it's kind of out there, but you're more focused on getting business. That's why you're here, right? So you really need to also think about the risks that you're facing every day. It mitigates that risk, as we'll talk about later. Protects the company if it's investigated or audited. More regulations means more controls to manage. Small organizations, and this is so true in every aspect of our businesses today, small organizations are being held to an increasingly higher compliance standard, and you have to be aware of that. And those compliance requirements are constantly evolving. You have to keep on top of them. So it's not a one and done. This is an evolving, living process that you have to pay attention to. And these big words down here, the federal sentencing guidelines, that's actually what all of this is based on. It's what you want to do is find out what are they going to get me on and then back into it from there. So what will they look for? Recently in February of this year, the DOJ published a list of 115 questions to help you know what that is. And I'm going to go fly through them today, but trust me, I'm not going to give you 115 questions. I'm going to give you the topics. Basically, what they're looking for is your program for real? Are you really using it, or is it just collecting dust on your shelf? So the topics. They're going to look at the analysis and remediation of underlying misconduct. So would you say, what misconduct? I'm not going to do anything wrong. You may not even intend to. And let me tell you what the number one way to get in trouble is your third-party vendors. Third parties will do it to you every time. So you have to really watch who you're doing business with. It's not what you're necessarily doing. It's kind of like driving. Watch for what you're doing, but also watch the other folks on the road. So, senior and middle management. Now, a lot of y'all are real small businesses, so you are the senior and middle management. They're going to look to make sure you're paying attention to what's going on with your employees and your vendors and any other third parties that you do business with. The autonomy and resources, they want to make sure that that compliance program is running on its own. It's not under any undue influence by, say, the sales folks. Because we all know sales wants to get the deal done, but we have to make sure we're doing the right thing at the same time. Policies and procedures, they want to make sure that those policies and procedures were designed for your business, and they want to make sure it fits what you do. What will work for the financial industry will not necessarily work for a government contractor. It will not necessarily work for a widget maker. So you have to make sure that what you have is not just a canned policy and procedure, that you have designed it to fit your business. Risk assessment, they want to make sure that you're going through that process to assess what risk you have and that you're looking at it on a regular basis. Training and communications. It's not enough just to put together a policy and put it on the shelf. You have to make sure your employees and the people that you work with, even your third-party vendors, know that you have a program and that you're going to follow it, and they know what's in it. And to do that, there's several things you can do. We won't go into them today, but you can certainly contact us later and we can discuss that. Confidential reporting and investigation. What this means is that somebody who has found or seen something that's gone wrong, that may be some type of misconduct that they think is some type of breach, that they have a way to confidentially report it and know that it's going to be taken seriously. The government's going to want to look at what your procedures are for that and to make sure that people are comfortable calling that hotline, that you have some type of procedure in place that they can report that to, and it's taken seriously. Incentives and disciplinary measures. They want to know that if there was some misconduct done, that it was taken seriously and you disciplined that individual or individuals that caused that misconduct to occur. Continuous improvement, periodic testing, and review. Very, very important. As I've said throughout this, it's not just a document you put on your shelf. It's a living, breathing process and document that you want to review constantly and adjust as the times change. As we know, regulations change on a daily basis. Especially with the new administration, we don't really know what's going to come out of it right now. But if you have a compliance program now, you're going to want to reassess that as the winds of change in Washington, D.C. occur. The last two, third-party management. I cannot harp on this enough. And a quick war story. We, as I said, my company exports to many countries around the world. And we unfortunately had one of our, which was long-term reseller of our products, forge a document, and somehow we caught it. But it's such a violation that I had to report it up. We're owned by a parent corporation out of Chicago. I had to report it up the ranks. They had to report it to the board of directors. We had to take action against this reseller. Fortunately, there was no harm done. We caught it before any reporting to the federal government occurred, such as what was called an AES filing when you're doing export stuff. And so we were able just to kind of put them on ice for a little while and then reestablish that relationship with a much sharper eye as to what they're doing and who they have working for them. As a matter of fact, the person resigned from the company because they acknowledged the forgery. And so we were able to continue working with them. But that's a true story that happened. So that's why you have to watch your vendors. Mergers and acquisitions. Hopefully your small business will get big enough one day where somebody buys you out big and you can go sail the Caribbean for the rest of your life. But you have to make sure that you have documented what you have done if you've had any misconduct in your business at any time. So when it comes time for that big company, when Microsoft comes knocking at your door, and you can show them what you've done and that you've remedied it and you've mitigated it and you've employed new processes to prevent it from ever happening again. So with that, I'm out of breath. And I'm going to hand it over to Mary Scott.
So with the merger and acquisition piece, the reason why we decided to mention that, y'all, is that that is the goal for most small businesses, is to get big enough to be acquired or to do a public offering, one of those two. I'm mic'd up, okay. So the reason why we mentioned, how do I advance? Okay, hold on, Nellie.
That's not going to work. You're going to have to click the mouse.
Okay.
I don't know why that's not working.
Okay. So the reason why we mentioned the merger and the acquisition really is because if you can show, or your clients can show, a good history of compliance, a documented history of compliance, it's going to far increase the value of your company. That is something that a valuation company, somebody that's coming in to look at what is the value of your company when you go to be bought, they want to know that you have done good compliance over the years. That's going to give them a sense of confidence, up the value of your company. So where do I start? Start with observing the culture of the company. Employee engagement, talent pool. Look at what's going on inside your company, and examine your risk profiles, your areas of risk. Not every finance, public finance or personal finance doesn't have the same risks as HR, doesn't have the same risks as a philanthropy, as another company. You need to know exactly, to the best of your ability, what your risks are and the probability of that risk event. Build the internal support for the program within the company. This is super important, y'all. It's a mindset of the entire company. When I was hired, we thought long and hard at Intuitive about what my title should be. I am Corporate Advisor for Compliance, Ethics, and Risk. Corporate Advisor for Compliance, Ethics, and Risk, because my company, my leadership, some of you may know Ray Almodovar, some of you may know Hal Brewer, we have other executives too, but they felt like it was very important that we establish a position at our company who really, that was what they did. That's what I do. Maintain that compliance environment, that ethics environment, making sure that we're always looking at our risks. A lot of those are legal risks, risks to our reputation, all sorts of risks, not just the legal ones. All right, so we're going to look at a roadmap, 18-month roadmap. What am I doing wrong here? There we go. Okay. All right. Month one, and y'all, there's a tendency with all of this to want to hurry to the finish line. We want to be done with compliance. Don't think of it that way. Think of it as an evolving process, as something you do, a mindset that you take on. You take on the mindset of ameliorating your risk, controlling your risk, managing compliance. It's a process. And what will happen when let's say you get to that moment when you're in a buyout situation, they want to see an evolution. Like the first year, if you look at my notebooks, literally look at my notebooks that have the minutes of my compliance committee meetings. The first year, 2012, real skinny. 2013, 2014, 2015, they get bigger, and they literally get bigger. The bindings on the backside get bigger. Vicki mentioned the federal sentencing guidelines. The federal sentencing guidelines don't say you need to have done X, Y, and Z by day 30, and by day 45 you need to have done C, D, and E. They don't say that. What they say is that your program has to be bona fide, has to be real. Well, what's real in this life when it comes to business? It evolves, just like our lives do. It changes. We have that risk. I didn't know one day we realized that we had an additional risk at Intuitive because we were doing training that involved shipping anti-corrosion chemicals overseas. That became a new risk for us because we had to understand what the FAA requirements were for shipping those materials. What the federal sentencing guidelines say, they don't say anything about FAA. They don't say anything about the more than 100 agencies that do compliance oversight. What they say is your program has to be bona fide, has to be real. That means you're taking a thoughtful approach to it and then documenting those efforts. So I say here, list all your potential risks. List all the ones that you can think of. And literally that means, for a lot of you guys, that means starting a list on your phone. You know, that's the easiest place to start it. For those of you that have smartphones, I'd recommend just putting it on your phone. And as you're thinking through the day, oh, that's a risk. Note it down. You know, just literally, I know that sounds really stupid, but that's how I would recommend you start it. Put it on your phone because your phone is always with you. And then take a month and think about all those risks. Oh, I have reputational risk. Oh, I'm a financial services. I have an insurance risk. I have these insurance requirements that I have to meet. And look at other companies that are similarly situated and see what their risks are. Month 2, organize it and prioritize. Take that list that you've made. I mean, I'm telling you, do it on your phone. Some of you might carry around, I like to carry around a little notebook or a little, especially when I'm on the campaign trail, I carry around a little notebook because sometimes people think that if you're typing on your phone, you're texting somebody instead of paying attention to them. Writing is sort of an old-fashioned. So you might get out your notebook, but organize it into risk categories like reputational risk specific to financial services, risk specific to HR. For you're dealing with ITAR a lot. ITAR is the international trade risk. Whatever. Organize it into categories and then prioritize it. So, my highest risk in this category is this. Don't worry at this point. There's some real science to this of attaching weights. Like, my incidence potential for this risk is a 3, and if it happens, it's a 3, and 3 times 3 is 9. And there's some real science to doing this, and people get caught up in it because they go out and these small businesses read whatever literature is out there about risk assessments, and they go, oh, I don't recommend that. I recommend creating a list, and just as you would in your own household. Well, the thing that I have to manage is my mortgage. I have to do that number one. In your budget, that's usually the thing that people put first. Just organize it according to some logical flow where the highest risk is up front. And then keep driving on. Month 3, flesh out your risk categories, meaning, put some data below those risks that kind of helps you and helps anybody else that's looking at your listing of risk understand exactly what you're looking at. And then, to the best of your abilities, we recognize that y'all are not lawyers, and you're not likely, and I'm not suggesting that you go to a lawyer at this point, but just anecdotally, Google, whatever, you can identify what you, and I should have taken out all, because that's a pretty intimidating word. You can't possibly do all. All meaning all the laws, compliance rules, all the regulations that you can identify. Try to list those, put those, in your list category. And then month 4 is a big month. And then again, I say month 4 because we wanted to give you all a roadmap. This might be month 4, might be month 5, might be month 6. But get your stakeholders involved in your company. Even if you're a company of 2, your stakeholders are going to be you and me and you. It's not going to be a lot of, but get whoever is involved in your company, get your stakeholders involved, and at looking at this risk framework and fleshing it out further. Set your meeting schedule. I highly recommend setting a meeting schedule for a compliance committee. And what we're describing here is a compliance committee approach. Now, multinational companies, Fortune 5s, Fortune 100s, Volkswagen, for example, the most spectacular, compliance failure in recent history. Everybody kind of familiar with Volkswagen, with the emissions? That was a compliance issue. Their compliance program should have caught that. That's I'm sure, a $1 billion compliance program that didn't work. Didn't work as well as some of this will work if y'all just do it with an eye to trying to do it right. That's what bona fide is. Doesn't mean you're going to do it perfectly. Doesn't mean you're going to do it exactly like some roadmap. You're going to do it to the best of your ability. And part of that is setting a regular meeting schedule for your committee. And you're like, what is that? What's that committee? Well, if you're in a company of 2, it's you and the other guy. If you're in a company of 5, it's maybe you and 1 or 2 others. Doesn't have to be everybody, but it is the people that you need to influence their thinking. And everybody should know about your efforts. Keep minutes. of your compliance committee meeting. Meet regularly. In my committee, we have a simple approach. We meet 6 times a year. I set the meeting schedule at the beginning of the year. We try to keep it. Every once in a while, one slips a week or two, you know, but we try to keep that. And then draft a compliance handbook. Now, ours at Intuitive, it's not very complicated. It talks about the kind of environment we want to set. It doesn't list specific risks. Our risk framework is an appendix to it, and our risk framework changes all the time. It's kind of like your will and an addendum to your will. Your addendum can change, your will stay the same. But that handbook is really important. Again, that's something that when you get bought out, when people come looking at you, they want to see that you have a compliance handbook. I mean, ours is 6 pages. I mean, and we're a pretty successful company. It's not super complicated. And then you kind of get yourself on cruise control. And for about a year, I want you to continue those regular meetings. Review and revise your policies. Review and revise your risk framework. Don't sweat it. Just keep on meeting. Keep getting better at this stuff. Keep that list on your phone. When you get back to the office, add to your risk listing. In month 18, I recommend at this point, this is a good time. Because at this point, hopefully you've grown past 2 people. You're a couple of people, maybe you're 4, you're 5, you're 6. This is the point at month 18 that I recommend going out and hiring, this is the best use of your money. Go and hire a Maynard Cooper or a Bradley A. Rant or a Lanier Ford law firm and get a desk audit. It won't cost you a whole lot. A desk audit would take, a lawyer a couple of hours. You're paying them a couple $100 an hour. But I highly recommend you do this from a reputable law firm, because at this point you need some really good legal advice that's specific to you so that you really know you're on the right track. If you keep rocking along after month 18 without getting some input from a really high quality law firm, and I mean a business law firm, not a 3-person, shop that does divorces and, property disputes. I mean, go to we've got, 4 or 5 multi-state firms in this town, and then we've got probably another dozen really high quality business firms that are local. I mean, there's probably 20 to choose from, and I'm not pushing any one, but at this point, go and get outside counsel support and just make sure that your compliance program, and they're going to give you some advice and kind of help you hone your program. All right, the takeaways. Compliance program has to fit your culture. It absolutely can't be. It can't be something that's pulled off the shelf. Pull it off of Google. I mean, people say, well, we can more or less be academic about this. Go get it off the. It's somewhere on Google, right? No. As it stands, it's not, because every business is unique. So you want to take an approach that's absolutely bona fide and specific to you. It has to be real and embraced, and we've said this and foot stomped this. Again, to be real and embraced, it has to be a mindset. It has to be something that you're thinking about. Not all the time. I'm not asking you to be constant about it, but that's why keeping it on your phone or keeping it with you, keeping a little something in your pocketbook or in your pocket, when you do that, it does kind of start to weave its way in. Collaborative, vertical, horizontal, interwoven throughout the company. We've kind of foot stomped that quite a bit. Living program, updated as the company grows and changes, not something that you stick on the shelf. If it sticks on the shelf, it's just, you might as well not even do it. I would actually rather you have no compliance program than a bad one. And the ones that get done and say, oh, we're done, wash my hands of that, stick it on the shelf, that's worse than having a real one.